Hi, welcome to the Sugarcraft School with Rachel Hannah. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to arrange these beautiful sugar flowers on this 6-inch cake that's covered in sugar paste. So let's get started. So to begin with, I'm just going to explain the tools that I have available for this job. So I have my sugar flowers, which are all individually wired. I have a pair of wire cutters so I can cut the stem exactly to the size that I need it. I have a pair of needle nose pliers and I have some flower picks. So flower picks are basically what allow you to insert flowers into your cake in a food safe way. So they're open at one end and typically spiked and pointed at the other end. The pointed end goes into the cake, and then your stem, whether it's fresh or sugar flowers or silk flowers, can drop easily into the flower pick, which then gets inserted into the cake and keeps the cake completely food safe and protects it from any of the wires or indeed stems of fresh flowers if you're using them. So I'm using the small and the medium flower pick here. There's also a large, which is quite large compared to these, and is perfect for if you're doing a pre-arranged posy of flowers that you can just then drop into one big flower pick. Please be wary if you're using those bigger flower picks, not to put them too close to the edge, because as you push them in, they may well bulge out the side here. So make sure that you're popping them in a little bit away from the edge of the cake. So you can get different brands of flower picks online. So if you just have a search on your usual cake decorating stores and wherever you are in the world, and search for flower picks, they will come up. There's different brands, different sizes, so it depends where you are as to what you can get hold of. But we're using the small and the medium today, just because that works for the size of flowers and the stems that we have. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just sort of have a play with the flowers and see where they sit nicely on my cake. So this is our main focal flower. It's our biggest flower. It's the sort of the hero piece. And then we have a smaller accent one here, which they look really pretty together. They're sort of like a creamy yellow rose, and then we have a different style of rose here, which is a bit more yellow. It's more lemony, buttery yellow, which we may or may not use. And it's good just to have multiple options. Obviously depends on the size of the arrangement you're doing, and obviously if you're doing this for a paid customer, then you're likely going to be restricted by the budget as well. So it just depends, what you've got available to you. I personally really like incorporating or having a mix of individually wired petal flowers and non-wired petal flowers. So by that I mean this. There is a central bud and a wire that comes out the back of that central bud, but everything else has then been glued directly around that bud. These petals are static, they do not move. They are not individually wired petals. There's one single wire that runs through that flower. Compared to these, where I can move these petals, every petal is individually wired, and I can open this flower up, or I can make it more closed, depending upon the space that I have on the cake, and the arrangement that I'm making and how it nestles in between amongst the other flowers. So it's quite nice, particularly if you're a bit unsure about arranging your sugar flowers, to have a mix of movable petals and fixed petals, so that you have some flexibility, and try and sort of mix around, if you've got some fixed flowers, try and have some individually wired ones next to it, so that you can, if there's any gap, you can just sort of open up one side of the flower and fill in that gap, and perhaps then you have it closed at the other side where you might have a flower next to it bunched up, and you just have greater flexibility then in your arranging. So I would always start with my sort of main central focus flower and just decide where you think it would look nice. So I'm going to nestle it sort of here, so it's kind of at the top of this run of marble, which has been just highlighted with some metallic leaf. So I think on this top edge would look really nice. So just have a play about with which side of the flower would work best. And I'm actually going to take my pliers and just bend that stalk a little bit. You see there just from the side, so that I can pop it in a downward direction and still have the flower pointing forward. So when you're ready to do that, just get the flower pick, secure it onto your stem, use your pliers if you're struggling at all, just because sometimes your fingers and thumbs can be a bit clumsy, and then you can go ahead and push that into your cake. Okay. And if any of these individually wired petals are sort of more in your way, you can steer them round to the side and just move them around until you're happy with the positioning and the shaping of the flower. Okay. And I think I'm going to keep this arrangement quite simple, and I'm going to nestle this one into the side as a smaller version, just nicely nestled into the side there. So again, if you've got a side that's a bit less crowded, you might want to put that side next to this flower, and then have more petals over to the other side, just again for shaping and spacing. So again, I'm going to just bend this stem a little bit, just because we're doing it on this top edge here. Pop that in there, and then press that into the cake. Obviously, if you're working on dummy cakes, you don't need to use flower picks unless it's for a competition piece, then obviously you would need to still do those. Push that in so it's nice and secure. Make sure you can, obviously I'm working at a strange angle because of the camera, but make sure that you can have a good look at it and that you're happy with the positioning. Okay, the final thing I think I'm going to do for this cake is just pop a little collection of foliage just hanging out between the two roses here, just to finish it off and add that little bit extra. So you can see these two look beautiful perched on the edge of this 6-inch tier. I am going to finish it off with a little bit of foliage trailing in between the middle of them, just coming down the front of the cake. So I've got 2 pre-prepared stems here. And so at this stage you could just sort of hold up the options to kind of compare how they look, and then have a think about which one you might want to use. I think I might go for this longer one, just to kind of follow the line of this marble. So for these, obviously we're putting them down the front of the cake, and what we're wanting to do really is nestle the wire through this bit. I'll take this flower out so you can see a bit better. Nestle it through this gap here and then bend the wire so that it pokes down inside the cake. So for example, if I position this here where I want it to be and just bend the wire, which is where it's going to sit over the edge of the cake, like so, and obviously make sure it's not too low, we don't want it to be too obvious. Let it nestle quite closely. Okay, so that's our first bend, which is the edge of the cake. And then we want the wire to come in slightly enough so that we can then pop a pick into the cake. So, and a bit further along again, we're going to do another bend in the wire. So this is the edge where the cake is, and then this is where it will go into the cake, into the cake. So if we snip that excess off there, and I'll show you. So it would be like that. And that's how it goes then down the front of the cake. So if we position this on the front here, where we want it to go, we'll be able to gauge sort of where to put the flower pick. And we can then just gently push that in. And don't be frightened to like remove flowers that you've already put in to temporarily access somewhere else in, you know, that's a tight spot. And then we can go back and pop this one back in. I'm going to spin that around just to have a quick look at it. It might be that you might want to tweak the positioning of a few things, or open some of these petals up, or even spin the flower around so that it sits in the most perfect place. Because every flower is slightly different, and you want to just make sure you get it in the perfect spot. Like that. There we go. Okay, and that's how we've got the flower trailing down the front of the cake. Now, the back of the cake can be left like this if you want. You could obviously push this in further and cut that stem shorter if you wanted. You don't need to worry too much about the cake unless you think it's going to be seen and visible. But always, you know, if you are worried about the back, you can always just pop a spare flower in the back, which I'll show you now. So that it's perfect from all angles. Let's get your wire. Pushing gently in. We might just spin that round a little bit. Push that down. And then the back of the cake is nicely covered as well. And even from this side bit, you could then just put another little bit of foliage. I'll slide that in for now so you can see. Just like that, to hide things from the side if you're worried about it. But you know, in a lot of cases, the cake will be on display up, you know, in the corner of a room or up against, you know, a wall or something like that. So you don't need to worry massively about those things. But if it is going to be on display in an area where guests can walk all the way around it, then it might be something you're worried about. So just always have a plan for the back of the cake if you're doing an arrangement that's perched on the top edge of a cake like this. And there's our arrangement. So we've got a beautiful display using 2 fully wired flowers, a big statement one, a little smaller baby one next to it, then a non-wired, it obviously has a central wire, but the rose here in this configuration at the back is fully fixed in place, and then 2 little bits of foliage, and you've got a beautiful arrangement on your cake. So here's the finished arrangement. I'm going to spin it around so you can see it from all angles. You can see just with a handful of flowers, we've made a beautiful arrangement that anyone would be grateful to receive and would absolutely love. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe.